Throughout the world, greed has led in part to populist movements. You say, oh, but greed, surely this is just about culture wars. But these culture wars have come about basically because some individuals are profiting from them. And the individuals that are profiting from the culture wars are by and large media outlets that use sensationalism rather than simply reporting the news accurately and truly. Now, the problem is that in these democratic societies that allow freedom of press, which is a necessary thing to have for governments to function freely, such often gets abused. And with the current new abilities in the digital age, governments haven't figured out how to regulate the media in such a way that it eliminates, in large part, false projections and untruths. It can be done. It does not mean that such will not continue to exist as satire, but you cannot continue to allow commentary shows, faulty commentary shows, to pass as news. Now, interestingly, your world is moving towards democracy, more and more so. Now, if you look at the past, you will say, monarchies worked well. They are a good and stable form of government. Yet monarchies are only as stable as their leaders. When the people of Israel came out of Egypt, they had in effect been under a monarchy. They were under the rule of the Pharaoh. They were given what? Laws. Let's put this in terms of today. They were given a constitution and legal system. And they were given judges. They were not given kings. They were not given people to rule over them. The rule that was over them was their constitution. Now, the populist movement arose amongst the people of Israel, and they said, we want to be like other nations. Give us a king. And, of course, Israel had prophets. Prophets have existed in all nations throughout the world and all periods of history. And through them, kings were given. And this ultimately led to constitutional issues for Israel. So now, those people who most want the populist movement to succeed are people who would throw democracy out the window. Yet democracy is very close to the constitutional government that was originally working for the nation of Israel. Now, throughout the centuries, different types of governments have been tried. And it can be seen that some are total failures. Communism was even tried in the early church. The apostles were with the people and they held all things in common. And you see what happened with Ananias and Sapphira. Oh, what do you think? Did communism work for the early church? Well, obviously not. And it sure has not worked for any of the nations that now purport themselves to be communist. Interestingly enough, socialism is a form of government that has always worked within the limitations of greed. When people's greed gets out of hand, capitalism and socialism both fail. But socialism was a part of the constitutional existence of the first Israel, as given by Moses. For the widows were taken care of, the orphans were taken care of, schooling was taken care of. People don't want to think of things in this manner, but what you had was a capitalist form of socialism that was a constitutional government in application with judges to enforce that government and a basic police force that extended from the priesthood. For you think of them today as priests, but the priests were actually the overseers of the constitutional government. Rather interesting when you look at what populism is today. Populism is seeking to do the same thing that the people in Israel did when they overthrew their constitutional government. They are saying, we want a king. We want a strong man. We want somebody that will lead us and will make things better for us so we don't have to take responsibility. Well, you saw in the United States what happens when people think that way. And you have a prime example right now in Russia of what happens when people allow a strong man to take over. You saw this with Chiang Kai-shek, Pol Pot, Hitler. Oh, it has been seen throughout the ages, and it always ends badly. So for those of you who are thinking in this world, whether it be in France or the United States or in England or any other country, of being part of the populist movement, we would warn you to think twice, because it never ends well. But there is hope. There is always hope, because you have a choice. We leave you with blessings and with peace. Peace be with each of you.